welcome back to Umineko Smoking Room. Oh, what the fuck? That's not Umineko Smoking Room. When We Cry Smoking Room. We have been already recording for 2 hours. I'm going delirious, I guess. This is either going to be a part of a second part of a episode, or it might just be a complete its own episode to itself. So because of that, we are going to do reintroductions. This is your friendly neighborhood mushroom, and please introduce yourself.
Ha ha ha, I'm still here. It's me, Jen, Witch of Communication, visiting from Golden Truth and Umineko Podcast, a podcast about Umineko.
Hi, it's me, Kirby, again. Guess what? I still haven't thought of a proper introduction for this. Oops.
Yes, Ed, you can go.
Oh.
I'm Jens, and I can go.
You can.
I cut out the part when I said you could go, and now I can't because it's basically the joke.
Nope, it's part of the bit now.
It's part of the bit
Okay,
now.
so
how it always works.
Right now, welcome back. This is the second parter of Gender and Umineko, but this is the spoiler section. So if you are still listening and you haven't finished all of Umineko, what are you doing? Stop this right now and go read it. Scam, you little child. So
shield your virgin ears, but if your ears are not virgin, please come in and be defiled with us.
Yes, please.
Are we gonna have last note spoilers? Do people care enough about last note?
We will talk about it in the end. Who cares?
I think that's fine.
We'll
Okay.
talk about
Yeah.
last note when we get there, if we do.
Alright, so instead of this being the question and answer arcs, it's the cis and trans arcs.
Oh my god. Oh. So yeah, thank you everyone for bearing with me through the first half / the other episode in this series, because I was my precious co-host who I love so much. I have to pretend that Umineko is not very trans around them all the time, and it kills me.
Yeah.
But I have to.
Yeah, every time she was talking about Umineko being cis, Mushroom just fucking had to DM me saying, I disagree so much, oh my god.
Because I was trying to message because I was like, she knows, right? Why is she saying this? Is she doing?
I figured it was just to keep the safety of
I see.
the Umineko virgins. And
Yeah.
Clearly, Kirby was way smarter than I was, who was constantly panicking about how gay that I think Umineko is.
I think it's complicated. I think I have a nuanced read that I'm going to try and bring into this and approach this from.
100%. We had a great break between the 2 episodes recording. We talked a lot, and I'm super ready to start talking about this again. So, yeah, it's ready. So, what topic do we want to start first? I guess, should we start from Sayo, or is that where we want to jump in?
I feel like Sayo is going to be an entire mini episode unto herself. What if we start with the first point on this list?
Isn't Sayo just all of the topics, though?
Literally! Isn't Sayo just all of Umineko?
Okay. Actually, sorry. Actually, let's do this again. Let's start in a very simple beginning. Non-binary icon Leon. Let's talk about Leon.
Yes. I pogged so hard when I saw non-binary icon Leon.
Our other host, Ambi, I was reading Umineko with him, and when we got to non-binary icon Leon, he was like, "This is it. This is what I want to be when I grow up, Mom."
Yeah, for real.
Leon is
for
like
real.
such. It's kind of incredible to me because I'm oftentimes I sit here in my dark corner, and I think how did he did this? Not only he wrote great trans characters, and then he's like, you know what else I'm gonna put in? A non-binary character, a very well done, and interesting, and a character who's just fuck you. You want to know my gender is back off.
One of the few that I can think of in popular media. Well, I don't know if America's really popular, but one of the few that I can think of in popular media that's
totally.
Really just
I think it's pretty
and well represented and just generally good.
Fucking. What was a non-binary person doing in a 2010 Japanese visual novel?
Not sexualized, not not demeaning. Nobody.
Or not a thing. It isn't a thing to be solved.
Yeah.
Like, nobody, like, and I mean, like, everybody in the story treats it, like, completely normal. Like, the only person who's constantly confused is Will, who already read the rest of Umineko and was like, you're not supposed to be in this story.
Who the fuck are you?
Well, I think it's very important to understanding Leon's character is that Leon's gender is not just, like, not stated, it's stated to be obscured, right? Like Berncastle says, like Will says that Berncastle made Jessica not use gendered terms when talking about Leon. And Leon says like, oh, well, you know, what gender do you, fucking Will has the fucking like line of the century where it says like, I could see you as a very effeminate boy, or I could see you as a very outspoken girl. Which are you? Which is just like, sir, you don't just ask people that.
Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the chapter.
But of course, Leon responds with fucking, well, what gender do you think I am? You know, like, it's not just, Leon never comes out and says that they are non-binary.
Oh,
it is
yeah.
specifically, it's like, it's obscured. It's what gender is Leon is something that the text does not give you. I have an argument that I will present here that Leon is in fact, well,
Dun dun dun. The word
dun,
in
dun,
fact.
Yeah, Leon's the culprit. No, well, I personally, this is my predilection showing, but I read Leon as a closeted trans woman, for a very specific reason, and that's in episode 5, when we have the mystery phone caller who is referred to as the man from 19
years ago.
The man.
Yes.
The man from 19 years ago. Not the woman, not the person, the man from 19 years ago.
Yes.
Which I think is a very big clue for how you're supposed to understand Sayo and Leon.
They also do go out of their way in the original to say that the voice didn't really sound, I think, at least in the versions where there wasn't voice acting, that the voice didn't really sound either.
Oh, I read that scene with the voice acting, and it's like, what the, why? Oh, yeah.
I mean, I find it interesting because, like, I think there's two very interesting things about that scene is that, like, in the original version it says like the voice doesn't sound female or male, like it could be either or. It's basically the same way how they described Leon. But the voice that they did go with is Battler's voice, which
Battler, yeah.
Which I think is still extra more funny because, like, it comes up with this whole theory of, like, Battler accomplice theory for EP5, which I still think is
totally. The theory that Battler comes up with himself and presents to protect Sayo. Like, it's, I think in terms of, like, choices you could make there.
That was the best
from a
choice,
production
the
standpoint,
second choice that you could choose.
That's the best thing you could do if you have to have a voice there.
I don't know if I really like the fact that there is a voice, because, like, in the parts where Battler was just trapped in, like, episode 6, they just didn't have a voice there, so it's like...
Oh, really?
You could have just
I haven't
done
read that far
nothing.
into console port yet.
I think what she's saying is that if you had to put a voice there, it's like the second best choice.
Yeah, if you had to put a choice there, that's the best you could do if you need to have a voice actor.
Which...
It is probably, like, the most interesting, but it isn't, like, a good, like, translation of what already was there in the text.
Oh, it's like that joke in Scott Pilgrim, where Scott Pilgrim is originally printed in black and white, and Scott Pilgrim goes up to Ramona and says, "Is that your natural hair color?" And she's like, what? I don't know. It could be. And there's a little box that says, "Note, this comic is in black and white." And then when they later went back and re-released Scott Pilgrim in color, that exact panel, now you can see her hair color, and it's like bright green or something. You know, they have that exact same dialogue. What? I don't know. It could be my natural hair color. And then the little box says, "Note, this comic is no longer in black and white." And it's like, you have to translate it somehow, so you have to make a choice. And it's like a good one, but like the original spirit of the thing isn't there. And that's fine, because that's just the nature of adaptation.
Yeah, I see what that is. I will have to say, like, okay, so Well, I think like how like basically Sayo is read, like as in like is she a trans woman? Is she non-binary? Blah blah blah. Like that is something that's interesting to be read. Like however, I personally think it's pretty not unanimous. Let's not say that. Either it is the scenario where the baby that was born 19 years ago was born defected because it's a double incest baby. Either of those readings would lead to trans Sayo anyway, but like if the baby but the baby was read as male when the baby was tiny. That's the only way I can put it.
That's the thing, yeah. It's about assignment, right?
I have
the thing that we can take from I think the thing that we can take from Natsuhi referring to this person as the man from 19 years ago is that whatever the actual circumstances of their birth, they are someone who was assigned male at birth, right? Like literally a map.
Yeah, I think we can. Yeah.
Okay, I have a question. If an intersex person is non-binary, does that make them cis?
I'm gonna go with no on that one. I think that makes them double trans.
Oh my god.
Okay, but so can you not be cis if you're intersex?
I mean, cis is about assignment, right? It's not actually about your genitals. It's about what does society assign you at your birth. People with intersex, conditions are often like have surgeries as infants to like quote unquote rectify their shit, and then they are assigned a particular gender one way or the other. Usually, some parents I think nowadays are starting to get better about that.
Yeah.
But
not in 1986.
Not in 1986.
Yeah, not 1986.
I mean,
God.
Okay, so coming back to like Umineko and how this is 1986 Japan, yes. Sayo doesn't have the internet. Sayo lives on a fucking island, which doesn't really help at all with her circumstance. No. And the thing that I wanted to mention about like the Shannon and George relationship is that there's a part where like in EP3 where Battler and they're talking about the whole epitaph thing, and then like Shannon's like, oh, I remember trying to solve mysteries just like in general when I was young, and or like she even mentions like, oh, I even tried to like solve the epitaph, and George is like, oh, I never knew that you like those type of things, and then she's just like, ha ha ha, and I was like, ooh.
I totally missed that. When is that?
It happens like I think in EP3 very early on, like.
Wow, I totally forgot about that. And holy shit!
I was like, ooh, that's the only fucking time because.
Wow, yeah, that totally recasts everything I've been thinking about George and Shannon's, like, the way Ryukishi wants you to understand it.
Because the thing is like, this is, like, that's why I actually, despite all the things about, like, how Ryukishi writes, like, Shannon and George, is, like, I totally think, like, Ryukishi's doing this on purpose. Like, I think, like it is.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, like as in like the age gap thing is on purpose. Like the whole like power dynamic, and it's interesting because, like George says in EP3, he says, "Oh, like Shannon made me more of a man, while my mother was like basically emasculated. Like, if you grew up with like Eva, like you would get emasculated constantly by like Eva, the girl boss, and then how like." Part of me feels like it was the type of thing where Sayo was so sad and lonely that she, like, not only, like, George was, like, using her to be like, oh, I feel like more a manly man when I stand with, like, my petite girlfriend who's, like, but also, like, Shannon was projecting of what she wanted, like, as in, like, I want a man who can, like make decisions or something. Like,
yeah, totally. They both just like needed each other in that moment, and yeah, totally. That's a really compelling read.
Yeah, like, so one of the things that like Sayome and I, the other hosts on this podcast, were talking about is like, do we think that like Sayo actually took the ring because she wanted to get married, or was the whole thing about how Sayo was gonna take the ring and fucking sell it so she has money to get off this fucking island. Like,
I thought Sayo already had a bunch of money.
Well,
yeah,
yeah.
Sayo, that's a good idea, but Sayo literally does have all of the gold to
but
her
like,
name.
but like
Yeah.
at the
She
same
cares about
time,
that.
like I was like thinking, like Sayome and I were like, but she could sell it because she like, does she even want it? Like,
She
does she
could.
want the ring? Like, I think like there's multiple ways to like read about like a lot of things, but like the George and Shannon relationship, like I think Kirby mentioned this earlier in the previous part where like they talked about how like it doesn't seem like, or like I think yes said, I actually don't remember what, I literally have no memory of anything now. It's like, so like about how Shannon and George doesn't seem like they talk about anything. Like they just talk about the future. Like they don't talk about what they like.
I think I mentioned that.
Yeah.
And it's a future that's founded on an idea of Shannon being able to bear children, which she is not.
Yeah, like,
Yeah,
and like
totally.
ideas that like it's so like super like, oh, we're gonna get a
Yeah,
white
like-
picket fence, like we're gonna have children.
Which I guess for me, Wyatt, in episode 6 in the duel when Shannon beats Canon, I'm like, no, come on, I don't want George to.
Well,
fucking
totally.
win the, you know the episode 6 duel.
Yeah, totally,
Yeah.
totally.
That's actually a really funny
Probably.
scene because I have an interpretation on that
Yeah.
scene about EP6. Why does
Yeah.
Shannon beat Canon in that scene? Is that I think after everything, Sayo doesn't have confidence in Jessica. Like, as in like I think like it's, which is so sad. Like I mentioned this in the Valentine's episode. I also mentioned it in like the episode every single time Jessica dies. I'm like I was like, Sayo has no confidence in Jessica. Like literally, like Jessica's like pouring her heart out. It's like, I will accept you. I love you for the things that you are bad. Like you think you're bad about. Like, please tell me your real name. Like I want to get to know you. And then like for Beatrice to kill Jessica before like Canon, quote unquote, has the ability to tell Jessica his real name in EP2, I was like, wow, Sayo, that's real cold.
Yeah. I think even with the way that like literally here in the moment you're like totally reshaping my understanding about the way that George and Shannon are written in relationship to each other. I think that like for all of like the fact that the dream, the literal false dream of like, we're going to sit on our porch and watch all of our biological children and grandchildren populate the shit, like setting aside that is like both like a fantasy and also impossible. It is also like
more secure.
It's a future. Yeah, it is literally a future where Jessica is, and Canon haven't had the chance to really forge the relationship where like George and Shannon, it's a bad relationship. Yeah, and I think maybe Sayo even unconsciously like recognizes that this is like something that is bad for her. It's still something. It's still something. It's still something.
There's something I wanted to talk about, like, just with, speaking of just the age gap between George and Shannon, I always, and maybe this is just me, I felt that, like, you know how Ryukishi went, like, oh, she's not
totally.
actually
She's 19,
16,
haha, gotcha.
She's 19, I felt like that was because maybe people were like, 23 and 16.
No, I feel like that.
But
I feel like that actually exists for like the mystery. Like I truly think that was.
I don't think so.
Planned.
Yeah, that's definitely like much more of a core element of the story than a retcon-y thing.
It does
but
kind of have that effect.
I do wonder
though,
how
right?
intentional was it that.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
That like George like mentioned the flashback of
Dude.
how he was jealous of Battler.
Dude,
being with Sayo.
And it happened
and it was
6
just like
years ago.
And it was just
No,
like
that's so
that.
sick,
If you
though.
do the
That's so
math,
fucking
he
sick.
would have been 17, and
I
she
know.
would have been like
I know. It's the
perceived
worst.
to
It's
be
the worst. It's the
10,
worst.
Which is like Did he mean to write it like that? Did
even
he
if
think
it was
that
the
was
correct
fine,
age, that is
or
17 and 13, and that is still fucking weird.
yeah, that's still fucked.
Well, I think like
well, remember that George is. I think this might be what Mush is about to say, but like George is written to be someone who has like overcome certain deficiencies in himself. Like it's never really made entirely clear. It was just I used to be bad and an incel, but now I'm a Chad and a gamer. And I think part of what we can infer that to be is that like, oh wow, George did the gentlemanly thing and waited until she was I might be misunderstanding this, but 16 is like the bare minimum legal age in Japan. Yeah, so he like, I will wait until she is barely legal, and then I will propose to her. Like, what are you, sir?
Wait, I thought that 18 was still like the age of consent in Japan.
no.
I
mean, 17 is for like I think like if your parents let's just do it. I'm gonna put incognito on. I'm gonna incognito myself.
Guys,
you don't want
the
that
age of
history.
consent in Japan is actually 13, so it's okay to be a pedophile.
Okay, George.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those things.
Or no, it's
very
like
fucked up.
It's one of those half truths where the bare minimum country age is 13, but the only places that don't raise it to 18 is like 2 uninhabited islands.
Yeah, exactly. That's my understanding. But
okay, but I also want to mention this. My thoughts about this is that like, do I think Ryukishi has an idea that this is wrong in text? I think yes. The reason why I mention this is in a few things. Is like one of the things that I think why I think Ryukishi knows it's wrong is that I think there's multiple like as in Yasu knows it's wrong. Like Sayo knows it's wrong.
Yes.
Like Sayo says it's wrong all the time in every single conversation Canon has with Shannon. Like Canon's like, what the fuck are you thinking? Did you think this was gonna be a good relationship? What the fuck are you gonna do after you get off this island? They're gonna have babies with him? Like, is that what you really want? Like constantly. Like even Beatrice, like whole EP2 is about how Beatrice is just berating like Shannon about how stupid her fucking decision about like getting with like George is. And she's like, what do you like about George? George is a tubby shitty man. Like, what is he gonna give you? Like,
oh, tubby men
he's
can
like
be
good
alright.
looking or anything?
He is a shitty man.
Yeah, so all of that, like, and I think like while like Ryukishi writes that like George has overcame his incel-y ways, like the way how he talks about like situations is really still
it's very it's legalese, right? Like even like the shit with Maria and Rosa, like he's like, well, you know, the parent has the right to do the thing, and like it's all caught up in like, well, I will follow the laws and the rules and the strictures of the world of adults and just like accept them and work perfectly by them, when like a lot of those rules are fucked up.
Yeah, and then he's like the whole thing where they first see like I think in EP2 or something where they see like the parents argue about money, and both Jessica and Ballers are like, what the fuck? This is despicable. Like our parents are such shitty people. And then George is like, you should understand
Radical
them
centrist
because
George.
you know maybe they're fighting for our sake. And then...
You know what? George is the exact type of person who would say, you see, this isn't a genocide according to the UN definition of the term.
God, you're so fucking right. You're right.
George sees Maria getting beat by Rosa and he just says context.
Yeah. Well, let's wait and see. I read this book called Higurashi no Naku Koroni, and I think the child welfare people in that one had the right fucking idea.
Yeah, or like he basically is the well actually of this family. He's just like, well actually, like,
and that's kind of, I mean, so I think sometimes what George says has like sometimes you do have to reckon with the material circumstances of the world and say that these are the laws, like I have to either work inside of them or reject them or do something. But he's so bought into it. He doesn't have the capacity to say, yes, this is the way that the world works, and that is fucked up, and it should not work that way. He is like given over to like, this is just the way it is, right?
Yeah, he's very like systematic systematic misogyny, like all of this. He's like, it's very like
because
like
he was
gentleman,
raised by some
like nice guy type.
Yeah. So I'm here on a website called ageofconsent.net. And I'm going to read this. I'm going to scrub this from my search history and hopefully delete myself from all the CIA lists I'm now on. So here's what it says. Japan's statutory rape law is violated when an individual has consensual sexual contact with a person under age 13. At 13, Japan's base age of consent laws is the lowest of any developed country. However, many prefectures also have local corruption of minors or obscenity statutes, which raise the de facto age of consent to 16 to 18, unless they are in a, quote, sincere romantic relationship, usually determined by parental consent. That's fucked up. For example, the effective age of consent in Tokyo by local statute is 18. The age of marriage, this is the key part, the age of marriage is 16 for girls and 18 for boys with parental permission.
Why is it younger for girls? That's stupid.
It's so fucked up. So I wonder, since Sayo is an orphan, or George believes Sayo to be an orphan, does I wonder how that... But that's why George does it. That's why George does it, right? That must be because, Sayo is now legally able to be married to me.
Yeah, like, as in, like, there's nobody that could say no to our, like, thing. So if Sayo rejects me, it would be because Sayo rejects me, not because she has family problems. Like, that's that is such a trap. Like, that is,
God. Yeah, George is really just like orphan pussy got me acting unwise.
He truly is. Yeah, barely legal. George dead ass, so just barely legal on Pornhub.jp.
Yeah.
Oh God. Okay.
And that's I'm glad that we got to expand on the George.
Yeah, it needed to be expanded on for real.
Definitely. Because there's only so much you can say without going into
even deeper spoilers.
Yeah, like even deeper spoilers.
Sure. So Leon.
Oh, yeah, right, Leon.
I mean, if we don't have more thoughts about Leon, we don't. I mean,
any thoughts I have about Leon are kind of tied into like Sayo's gender writ large and how Umineko kind of handles not just Leon's gender, but like the whole like kind of twisted knot that is Sayo.
Yeah.
So I feel like I've said my piece.
Yeah. I guess I see it as I just see it as Leon as like on a completely different like Leon completely separate with like Canon, Shannon, and Beatrice branching off from each other in this whole like amalgamation with.
I feel like what Leon shows is that Sayo's transness is not a result of her trauma.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
It's, like, ultimately, like, it is something inherent to her. And, like, I have maybe some kind of, I think that it is maybe, it's simplified a little bit, but it's okay that it's simplified. It shows that transness is an inherent part of this person, you know?
Yeah.
That's what it does symbolically.
Yeah, I think it's really important because, I mean, I actually really respect that decision from Nuikishi. Like, I don't know what kind of scripture he's fucking reading in 1990, like, no, not 1990, like 2010 about, like, the trans agenda. But, like, for him, basically, do not decide that, like, that if Sayo was born in a normal circumstance, raised in a way that they were respected, that, like, that they would turn out to be, like, cis, like no,
yeah, that's
like as in like I think that's really important.
Yeah,
that, like,
I never thought about it that way, but that is really nice.
Yeah, Leon even says, like, when Will questions them about their gender, Leon even says, "Oh, well, you know, thanks for laying off. I have kind of a complex about it." So it isn't just that Leon is being like cagey or like or Berncastle is obscuring something. Leon genuinely has some kind of relationship with gender that is not just I am what I was assigned at birth.
Yeah, and I think that's really like good
totally.
Because, like, you know, if any other person who's writing this could I easily wrote like, oh, and then actually they were a closeted gay this whole time. Like, I don't know, like anything that they could have wrote, like any combination of things that could have just been really bad. But no, they didn't. They just didn't address it, which is actually the best way to approach the topic. Definitely. So now, we're gonna leave Beatrice last because I think I have a lot to
sure.
talk about Beatrice. So first, let's talk about why was Canon made the way he was.
Let's tell you. Okay, this is when I was talking all last episode, last part, whatever, about why about like, oh, Canon's so transgender, ha ha ha. This is what's hiding underneath all of those jokes that I make to my people who don't know who are in the spoiler zone still. Is that I think I read, again, this is just me as a trans woman, I want to see myself in this, but I read Canon definitely as Sayo grows up, realizes that her puberty is not going the way it is supposed to, develops a lot of dysphoria around that, and then Canon is like the egg, the concept of the trans egg. Shannon, Sayo makes her own egg self, makes her own boy Sona to shunt all of that dysphoria off onto, so that Shannon can continue being the wonderful, girl that she has been this whole time. That's the way I see it.
That's a pretty incredible way.
I listened to like one of your episodes, and I like how you made me realize that in the episode 2, beginning of episode 2 with Canon out in the public, that he is literally wearing a boy motor hoodie.
He's so boy motor. Oh my god, he's literally like, no one look at any part of my body.
And like only wearing it like in public.
Because fucking Sayo has no idea what boy clothes are. Like, she can go out dressed as Shannon in like that weird brown frilly thing, but that's still like girl clothes. She's like, oh fuck, I have to dress like a boy. A big black trench coat so no one can see my horrible body.
Big trench coat.
Oh my god, it's so good. Everything about Canon, Shannon, like, you don't really get any hits of like transness. Okay. Canon is all transness. Canon is nothing but transness.
The first time I read through Umineko, I thought that, for whatever reason, I thought that Canon, before I figured out any of the Shannon canon stuff, I thought the Canon was a trans man.
Yeah, totally.
That was why he was wearing the big long coat thing to cover his,
and that's like
body.
Yeah, totally. I mean, either
that was what I thought.
And that I love the fact that Jen, you mentioned that scene in the first part we talked about, where you talked about how the moment when Canon sees like basically big like Battler, like he drops like the bag and immediately has like the oh, I wish to be like man, but also like but like also like but also like maybe homoerotic.
Yeah, totally. The Batokano, yeah,
yeah, like real. The total like I want to be him, but maybe also I like him. Like all of these like very.
I mean, what happens that as I recall it, that scene is Battler picks up the thing and is like, haha, bro, don't worry about it, my dude man buddy, and throws it on the wheelbarrow. They leave, and then Canon gets this little vignette, which is one of the only times in episode 1
you get like a
where the perspective is not Battler, right? And he like grips his arm or something, and he says, even I ... And there's just so much you could see there. Towards a trans mask canon, the name of my dissertation. I think that so I'm very invested, obviously, in a trans feminine reading of Sayo, and I do think 100%. It is one. I would argue that it is one that the text favors, but also because, like, in the way I was talking about with Japanese media, like, leaving a lot of space for interpretation, that's really valued in fandom spaces, because Sayo's gender is so, like, obscured and relies a lot on reading to determine or come to a personal understanding about that gender. Like, I feel like a trans masculine canon and a trans masculine like reading of the whole Sayo character is absolutely possible.
Yeah.
It's a little, I think it's sadder. I think it's sadder if you read it in a trans mask way, but it's like, it's 100% cogent and real and there, Yeah.
That was definitely how I was reading it through the first time.
So the reason why I planted the egg of talking about Renove gay or European is actually about like ties back into does Sayo think she's gay? That's what I want that's why I want to talk about it, because the thing I wanted to mention about is that, like, so as we all know, all of these characters that Sayo creates, like Virgilia, Gap, like even like Renove, like these are all characters that she creates to explore an idea of something. Like I think, like, when I imagine like what Sayo sees like Genji, like she's like, oh, maybe there's something happening there. Like maybe Genji's gay. Like, so instead, like,
oh sure,
like
okay,
Sayo's like, am I gay? Am I gay? Like, would I be gay? And then I think like Sayo's like, no, I am not gay. Like, and then Sayo writes this whole, like, basically, like, the most, like, overt, like, bad stereotype of a European gay man. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, and, like, basically to, like, definitely be like, that's what a gay man looks like. I am not a gay man. Do you see what this, like, basically, I personally feel like, like, Sayo wrote Renove to be so, like, European gay, to like basically to like make an example of like what like that is what gay looks like, and I'm not that. And like on the
yeah I can kind of see that, like, and that's really interesting when you compare that to her and Jessica and their like gal pal scenes and Shannon suggesting to Jessica, hey, maybe you could take Canon out on a date. I bet if you asked him, he'd be into it.
Yeah,
that scene haunts my dreams. I think about it all the time. I'm just like, oh, and like, just like the whole idea of like, even after like Shannon's like, I think that would be a total good idea. Shannon has a conversation with Canon, who's like, no, we're not doing that. It's very funny to me.
Yeah, God. Yeah. Well, just to say about Canon a little more is that I think trying to really approach the text as it is.
Yeah.
I think that it is very important to Umineko that it is possible that if Sayo had gone with anything, had committed to George, had committed to Jessica, had committed to Battler, that things might have been all right, and that they might have just been like, yeah, okay, well, maybe that you have to imagine that Sayo could have been happy in any of these lives.
Do you want to know what's the worst part about that? Is that I mentioned this in the previous episode. Sorry for cutting you off, but I have to say this now because it's so important. Is that I said that I get really mad at Yukishi in his interviews. Is that I remember in 2015 when I was I was reading a bunch of Yukishi interviews online, and Yukishi mentioned this, which made me so sad when I read it, which is Yukishi said, you know, in my imagination, if Shannon decided to go with George would have understood, and they probably would have adopted, and they probably would live really happily together. Totally. And I was like, fuck you, Nikishi, for writing that. Like, not that I didn't, like, I was not happy about that idea. I was just so saddened that was an option. Like, it was so much easier for me to decide, like, well, George would be transphobic, George would not would reject her, and then maybe, like, that's why, like, everything, like, maybe all of this is worth it. But, like, for Yukishi basically being like, no, I think George would have understood, and they could have adopted. Like George loved Shannon, at least he truly did. No matter if like Sayo believed that she fully loved George, like George would have committed. And I was just, I think like reading that realization made me like so sad.
Yeah, totally. I mean, what you said about George and Shannon George being like, oh, I didn't know you liked mystery novels, really puts an entirely new spin on their relationship to me, because like what George is in love with is the idea of Shannon, is the Shannon as she is presented, where what Jessica is in love with or could be in love with isn't Canon himself, but the person behind Canon, the real Canon. She keeps talking about this over and over and over again. The real Canon, like, what's your real name? Who are you? Like, Jessica is so invested in that, and George and what George is invested in is Shannon as he knows him, as the relationship has been built up, as like in the understanding they have come to about each other in the time that they've been together. And I think that the, you know, in terms of the possibilities of multiple truths, of like people can come together and create whatever truth they want, I think that it is certainly possible that maybe George would have understood. But I think if we look at like the text as it is on the page, not just looking at the interviews.
Fuck the interviews, man.
I think it's good to have an author's perspective on their own work, but also I think the text itself, as I read it at least, it tells a slightly different story. Right?
Yeah, I agree.
It paints that there's more of a question. I mean, even the manga does that, right? In Confession.
We'll talk about Confession.
We'll talk about Confession. Oh, we will. Yeah.
And like I because I was gonna say about my thoughts about George is that like when I mentioned the whole thing about like George not knowing Shannon likes mysteries is because like I think at a point Shannon or Sayo decided that like the mystery loving part of her is not a part of the Shannon persona. Like Shannon doesn't read, like Shannon doesn't like those type of things. Like if Shannon reads, like she reads romance. Like that's what she likes.
That to Beatrice.
Like she 100% like was like that's Beatrice now. And like that's one of the reason why I found that scene so fascinating, because like that like Sayo is like oftentimes when people think about this whole situation, they think about like Shannon as the more main persona or something. Mm-hmm. But like that is not
because of Confession.
Yes. Well, yeah, but like
we'll get there.
But like the thing is I honestly cannot say like which part of Sayo is the most out of the three, like her three OCs that she makes up. Like is Beatrice, like Beatrice has all her original, like it's like has her passion, has her likes, has her wants, like and Shannon is basically the projected femininity like that she wanted, and then Canon is basically everything she thinks is edgy about her, like that, like she's like this is my angst, like Canon is basically angst but personified.
Literally. Well, I if I'm remembering right, it's been a while since I've read the answer arcs, but if I remember right, there's even a scene where I think it's at the end of episode 6, where we see Sayo separate herself from Beatrice also.
Yes.
Like she says, from here on, I am no longer you, from here on, you are no longer me. So like, even Beatrice, like, at that point, the Sayo, like the person, the true person, not any of these personas, like becomes lost, no longer has any vector to the outside world.
Actually, that's one of the very important things I love to talk about, because I had this really deep questioning conversation with my friend Ambi about like what counts as a person in Umineko, because Sayo to herself is not a person. She didn't make herself a person. Like if she truly like
literally
like as in like she just like after Canon and Shannon disappears, she is nothing. She thinks of herself as a shell. There's nothing existing. That's why she gets to exist quote unquote outside of the game board, or like on the game board non accounted for, because she doesn't think of herself as a person. And I find that so like sad. Like Sayo is just like has nothing left. Like she has two faces that she performs as a person, and then that's it. Like there's her original personality is nowhere to be found. And
you know what, actually now I'm kind of wondering if they tie some of their personhood to gender.
Yes.
Where like their where like
absolutely.
their non-existence would be like a lack of gender, because of their main personalities being so gendered already. Because like they think of themselves as furniture and how like broken their sex is. So
yeah, totally. I mean,
Right,
remember that not only is Beatrice like the final horrible creation of the Ushiromiya family that undoes them, it's Sayo. Sayo, with all of her fucked up beliefs about her body, about herself, like being raised in Fukuin House, like super Christian hellhole.
Oh my god, I love that. I love how Ryukishi never overtly addresses religion, but you could, like, only until, like, EP8 when you get to the part where, like, Maria is like, yeah, I think of myself as Maria because, like, you know, I don't have a dad and virgin conception, blah, 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 blah. But, like, you could see that Ryukishi's, like, criticism of religion throughout, like, Umineko. It's very interesting.
So yeah, like, the ultimate death for Sayo, to what you're saying, Yen said, like, her ultimate death, her unmaking of herself is to, like, remove any gender. Like, I will perform this gender. I'll perform womanhood with Shannon. I'll perform manhood with Canon. But me, Sayo, like, I don't even exist anymore. I'm nothing. Like, the last vestiges of me are now this another woman that I've created, who I've sent off to be, like, literally the personification of a boy I like's dreams. And I, Sayo, the real Yasu, the real me, am degendered and am unreal now. Yeah, I think that's a really, really astute parallel to draw.
I was gonna mention this, but I think it's really fascinating because it is, I mean, Sayo is literally the type of person you're like, wow, they're born in the wrong generation. Like, if Sayo had the opportunity to be basically born in modern day and not being born on a fucking island and have the world to explore, like, she would probably
drop you off a cliff.
Yes, also that, like, all of those things not happening. Like, Sayo would have had the opportunity to understand, like, what are gender expressions, what could she possibly be,
totally,
like, or if she could be, like, if even being a non-binary is a decision she can make, or being gender fluid, or any of those decisions. But, like, because I think what I actually find really fascinating about how Sayo interpretates all of this is, like, in Sayo's mind, like, Sayo not only had to, like, Sayo basically conflicted sexuality with gender. Like, if I am female, I am with a man. If I am a man, I will have to be with a woman. And, like, and there's no in between. I cannot, like, I have to be het.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, that's a really weird and extreme way of, like, how Sayo associated that, like, idea in a way to so extreme that Sayo basically decides to kill off whoever the counterpart of the person. Like, if she kills off George, Shannon dies. If she kills off Jessica, the Canon dies, because there's no reason for the other person to exist if the person basically she's having, like, a relationship with is like dead. And that is so, like, what a horrifying toxic way of seeing her own, like, gender and her own self.
That kind of gets to what I was saying in the first part, where, of course, Umineko is actually secretly very trans, but also it's kind of not explicitly trans. It has a wonderful, beautifully realized trans character, but, like, Sayo has all the wealth of the Ushiromiya family behind her, and, like, HRT exists in 1986, in the 1980s. You know, like, I want, what I leave Umineko kind of wanting is that, like, what if Umineko didn't just have a trans character and, like, was about, like, ultimately Umineko's trans politics come down to kind of, like, trans rights, and, like, you can be whatever you want and it doesn't matter, and, like, that's great and that's wonderful, but I want to know about how does Sayo, like, what is it like being a transgender woman, or just transgender in general? What's that being transgender in Japan in the 1980s? Like, what kind of routes might Sayo have gone down? And, like, it doesn't even mean that the story needs to change, because, as always, there are lots of roadblocks that get put up to trans people when they're trying to transition. That always happens, no matter when it is.
I actually have some thoughts on the HRT thing, I guess. Just so, I guess the way I see it, so currently,
They don't need HRT. They can just use magic.
Yeah, well,
you're right.
they could use the golden magic. They could use 10 billion yen to get from wherever, for real.
I think the reason, the way I saw it was that the reason they didn't take HRT, even though they had all the money in the world pretty much accessible to them, and anything they could have ever wanted, they probably could have gotten if it really came down to it, was because of the conflict between being Shannon and being Canon. I guess didn't want to
yeah, that's a good point.
Currently, their body would be, I guess, genderless, for lack of a better word, and they were torn between just being Canon or being Shannon, and that was what that was at least what I felt like what the whole duel was about at the end, was that
is to choose which gender,
is to choose which gender is the dominant one, which personality gets to exist and which one gets to fade away, because they would no longer have a body for that,
totally. And and I think that's a good point, but I still think that if Umineko wanted to be more trans, wanted to be explicitly trans, it could explore that tension,
Yeah.
I think this was mentioned. I was talking to Sayo about this, and she was telling me, she's like, I wish, as in a way, basically, Ryukishi dodges a lot of questions about things in not being overtly trans. I also have my own personal reading of why Sayo would have a hard time going through either deciding about surgery, getting any hormones and anything. I feel like Sayo clearly suffers from a lot of internalized transphobia and also homophobia. They're how she and which is stuff you could see by how she writes about herself, and it writes about people around her, about how she writes Renovate basically as a token weird gay man who basically makes butterfly eyes with every man he sees, and how he basically just writes maybe it's all of these things are about how Virgilia and Gap are just roommates, it's
totally
all of these things that are that I feel Sayo is writing shows, I guess, not saying I wouldn't want to say immaturity, but in the fact that Sayo is actually not that far on her journey yet of figuring out if that's any of a decision. And I think that's it's really, that's why one of my point that I wrote for all of the topics is that what is more relatable than dumb queer kid using OCs to explore their own sexuality is and gender is that's the whole reason why Sayo even decided that she was gonna blow up this island, because she thinks that she's running out of time to even make a decision. Sayo was having problems about their own gender even before knowing that they were basically supposedly the head of the family. Well, not supposedly, they are the head of the family. She was already having a lot on her plate. Getting 10 tons, 20 tons of gold was not a release, was just way more problems for her to deal with.
Yeah, and what I mean when I say that is that I wish that those problems included an explicit engagement with ideas about literal actual transness as it existed in Japan in the 1980s. That's what I mean when I say Umineko is a story that has a wonderful, beautiful trans character who is treated with a really surprising amount of care and genuineness and love. But it is not a story that is about transness in that way.
I totally understand, and
that's fine. Not every story needs to be like that. It's as a trans woman, I guess what I'm saying is I want the video essay that's here's what transness was like in the 1980s. I guess that's what I'm saying.
I was just gonna say, I guess there would have, at least in how Umineko was written, there would have had a hard time writing how it would have been for Japan in the 1980s, because Sayo's inner circle, inner bubble of people is very limited. She doesn't leave the island. She's pretty much only with I think everyone who knows that she is trans understands that to
and I think
to some extent, so there isn't really like a place to do it, but I would still really like to see it. Exactly.
The plot of Umineko hinges on that stuff not being in the text, right?
Much,
I get it. I get why it's not there, but it does. That's what I mean when I say it's not a book about transness. When I say Umineko's not trans, I mean that's all I mean is that it's not actually engaging with transness in that way.
Yeah, like a lot of it, other trans elements relies on the fact that it is like a culturally closed circle. Where the close circle of everyone they know is very much extremely gendered and only considers male head of family and
totally
like very strict binary concepts, and like a lot of the tragedy of Leon is that they would kind of just be the solution for them, but because of how much Shannon and Canon is just like suffering from the binary.
I never thought about that.
Trying to figure out in the middle of the binary.
But, definitely.
But like it'd just be impossible in that closed circle because of the time period and the fact that there would be no one to introduce the concept that it'd be okay to be non-binary, even that non-binary is a word or a concept. Or that the people in the closed circle would even, like, consider that valid or respect them. Like, it's weird that they even go by gender-neutral pronouns in that fragment.
That's slightly more of a thing in Japan, isn't it? Neutral pronouns?
Well, I was actually going to mention this. So now this is going to be, like, weird Asian corner talking about being...
Yes, please.
I guess Okay, so so I am Chinese American. Like I spent 9 years of my life in China, which means I spend my elementary school up to my 9th grade in China. And the thing is like growing up in China has a lot of things to me. Like this is from a cis female point of view, of course. I realized I was like, basically, I knew I was a lesbian when I was like, I don't know, 6th grade, which is like very weird concept for you if you were living in like a very cis-het China, like but as a person who consumed anime, consumed like media, I was like, oh, I'm a lesbian. I know that. Like, I was like, and that was your lives. You're like, you don't talk about being gay or you don't like, it's funny because I realized after I moved to America, I gained so much vocabulary about talking about gender and sex in general that I realize I don't have any of those language to even say those things. Like, I don't know how to say non-binary. I don't know how to say trans in a non-derogatory way in Chinese. Like, I don't have a language for it. Like, I went to a boarding school, like, just, I think I joked about this, that I said lesbian Angie was very important to me because, like, I went to a boarding school, I realized I was a lesbian, I had my first girlfriend in middle school who we just hid it from everybody, like, we didn't tell any of our friends, we would go on dates outside of school, but, like, we will never mention it in school, and it was a very specific type of setting that, like things like being a lesbian is a very, like, I don't know, milquetoast, like, thing to be in America.
For sure.
Like, you know, like, everybody and your mom is a lesbian. Like, it's fine. Like,
oh, I wish that was true.
but
everybody with your mom is a lesbian.
There's definitely more cultural knowledge and acceptance of it, yeah.
Yeah, like, I'm not saying, like, I grew up in the 1990s in China. Like, this is, like, I grew up in, like, the 2010s of China. Like, that's where I was. Like, I remember it was, like, I was, like, 16 or something, and I was kissing my girlfriend on an escalator on public, and I was like, this is literally the most important moment in my life. Like, I was like, this is like insane. I was like, only trans person I ever know in China is like a really public trans woman figure, and usually that is the first, like, basically acceptable trans that you get, like, is a trans woman. Like a pretty trans woman in the media.
Yeah, a trans woman who performs femininity in a very specific way.
Yes,
and
yes.
Yeah, well,
yes, that's what
stuff.
I mean. Yeah, like a pretty trans woman who is a actress and she is a like a host on a, like, a very famous, like talk show. And that is the singular trans woman I could think of. And like the thing is like I think we often, or especially like people who consume Japanese media, often conflate the fact of like liking yaoi or liking yuri or even liking femboys. It's just such a fucking disgusting word to say. But like as in like, or even all the other concept things like are just fetishes to cater to like straight people. Like they're not like actual identities people explore, and they are made to be like put on doujinshis for like I don't know, straight people to enjoy. And like with all of that, like of course make me think that like in the 1986 like Sayo would have not been able to figure out that she is trans. In probably 2000s Sayo probably will still not be able to figure out, even if she was going to school in a regular school setting. Like maybe in like 2020 Japan, maybe she would. But like there are no like but like being trans or being like, those are not even a part of the vocabulary of like Asian countries. Like not at all. Like I don't know. I think about this a lot because like that's why I found Umineko to be so weirdly special. Like despite of like I don't know, all the very just secretly text way it's written, it's like it's about something, and it's not totally. Like, and it's not horrible, like, and I think like and
I totally get you. It was the first time at least I really felt seen in a lot of ways.
One, I will very lightly push back on you and say that like the femboys are fine. They're doing their own thing. They're like doing they can do whatever. Like, obviously, I don't want to be called a femboy because I'm, like, a woman, but, like, it's, like, they're fine. They're fine.
That's how I see it.
I know.
No, it's okay.
Yes,
you're fine.
Exactly. Like,
I'm sorry.
Just because...
Sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. You're fine. I have to look out for the other trans femmes out there. You know, we got to stick together. Transness as we understand it as, like, American. Is everyone here, like, American? Like, living in America?
We are American, yes. We're
okay.
All, yeah.
Like,
Too bad Des is not here.
Well, transness as we understand it in kind of, like, a Western context in this specific cultural moment, like, is a specific thing, but also we can understand transness as just people who exist across gendered systems. Like there are always trans people. There have always been trans people. There will 100%. Always be trans people. And so there, you know, even if the language wasn't widespread, I mean, you have one of my favorite bits of trivia, quote unquote trivia, is one time a person on the development team for Metroid, I want to say it might have been some kind of concept artist or background artist or something like that. He referred to, like, very jokingly, he said, "Oh, maybe Samus is a new half," which is as I understand it, derogatory. It is a word to denoting a trans feminine person, right?
I think it's considered, like, somewhat neutral in Japan, but I don't know.
That's just to say that the language, like, and Metroid was coming out in, like, 1985, 1986, so there was, you know, there was some awareness of that stuff. Also, it does mean that Samus Aran is a trans woman. No take back, sorry. Sorry, that's just how it works.
I have subscribed to your religion. I believe it too.
But like within the context of Umineko, what I just said was just to say that, you know, trans people are around. But within the context of Umineko, like Sayo probably, because she exists in this closed space, could she have known about transness? Could she have like even accepted transness if that was something like in her wheelhouse? Probably not. But even so, the fact of the matter is that this character, the Sayo character, who exists in Shannon and Canon and even Leon and of course Beatrice, who we haven't even talked about Beatrice yet.
Oh my god, we have to talk about Beatrice.
We're like 3 hours in and we haven't talked about Beatrice.
All the thing I want to say is that, like, obviously I don't think I feel like we're preaching to the choir at this point, but I feel like it's always great to say Sayo's trans, Sayo's so trans, and she's great, and I love her, and I love that this whole story revolves around someone who is even, like, as unexplicitly as something can explicitly be trans, she's trans.
Wow, thanks, Ryukishi.
I'd just like to say about like just knowledge about like queer stuff
Yeah.
in Japan, if she had more, is like, to my understanding, there's for like a long time been like a common misconception in Japan that like being trans and being gay were like the same
Totally.
thing.
That was a thing in the West too for a very long time, was just the idea of being an invert.
Or like if you're like a man attracted to men, then you must want to be a woman. So like I wonder how that
Totally
might have like affected things if she knew about it.
Yeah, queerness, I mean, is so often like unfortunately is like really influenced by the way, you know, we are all, like, all of us as people who are queer in one way or another, like, so much of that is influenced by the ways that we are forced to exist inside of cis straight society, right? And yeah, like the ways that we are all, I mean, I don't think drawing such hard lines between us is necessarily the good thing. Like, solidarity and understanding that, like, we're all fucking in it together is so important.
Yeah.
But the ways that, like, yeah, queerness evolves, and like the idea of, oh, you are attracted to men, so you must want to be a woman. The way that idea like grows and separates especially in popular culture, because that's just a particular fascination of mine, is so interesting. Yeah, I wonder, so what I'm saying is I need Ryukishi to write episode 10, which is the HRT of the Golden Witch, where it talks about how...
Yeah.
And it's very sad, obviously. Yes. Obviously, it's very sad, but I just need to know. I want this information.
The estrogen of the Golden Witch.
Literally. The transgenderification of the Golden
Honestly,
Witch.
yeah, I mean, I just on a random note before we get into Beatrice, because we have to talk about Beatrice.
We have to talk about
But
Beatrice.
I was just wondering, have you ever read any fanfic on AO3? And what I mean by, have you read Wanderlust of the Golden Witch?
I've started writing fanfic on AO3 on exactly this topic, but I only have one chapter out. But no, I feel like I've had that fic recommended to me before, but I haven't read it. Is it like... It's
what if Battler is a trans girl, and how would it go down?
Now you're speaking my language, rubbing my grubby little hands
I am not
together.
even joking. So this is the craziest story, but I recommend every single person to go read Wanderlust the Golden Witch. I think the night when I found it, I was so ecstatic that I like just sat there, like I just lied on my bed and read for like 6 hours straight, and then screamed to everybody on the Discord to go read it. And then I was like, and I like basically combed through like the person's like log, and then noticed that they were like, oh, we have a Discord, and I was like, I need to join this Discord to tell them how like thankful I am. And it's great. It's like the story sets up it as like, oh, like it's like a Beatrice and Battler's like a whole like party, and they invited somebody to they invited this demon to show up, and the demon shows them the game where what if Battler is a trans woman and how she would like navigate the whole like situation. And it's great because there's this whole scene where like I don't even want to spoil it. I'm not going to say anything more.
Yeah. I'll read it. I'll read it. Don't worry. No, Battler is a trans woman is everything I need to hear to get me on board with something.
Oh yeah. No. The best part is like her name is like, you know, it's Batora. So like her name is Tora. Like that's like her like that's her name. And then that's why they keep calling her like Tiger. Like it's adorable. It's really, really cute. It's great.
I need my trans man canon fix. I'm gonna go
for real, yeah.
AO3, and if it's not there, I'm just gonna start writing it myself.
I know. I keep thinking. So I keep thinking that I want to write just like vignettes of like basically Sayo, but in modern world, going out shopping for clothes that like she wants, and I just I want her to be happy. I want her to like, it's there. Okay. So now we avoided the humongous elephant in the room, and we're gonna finally talk about
Beatrice.
We managed to not talk about
best character ever made, Beatrice. Yay.
Love her. Love you, Beatrice.
Okay, so I haven't read the manga.
Okay.
But there is one part of the manga that, well, I've read Confession, but I haven't read like the regular Umineko manga. But
I have skimmed through.
There is one part in episode 3 when you know, Beatrice denies all witches and she's formless in the void with Battler.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. So Battler says, no, you are a witch, and the world reforms. And Beatrice, what she does the second she has her body back is she looks down her fucking dress to see her tits, and
she
then like blushes.
Tits.
She's real boobs. I was like, I'm like, oh, that's me every morning I wake up. Oh my god, I love Beatrice. I love Beatrice so much. I can't talk about how much I love Beatrice on my own podcast. I have to talk about it here. I love her.
She is so great. I want her all the good things in life, and I'm so like I that's why I find the whole concept of Beatrice fascinating, because Beatrice is what Battler wants her to be, but Beatrice is also what it's also what her mother looks like in a way. Like there's so many other like factors happening to like the conception of Beatrice. Like she's like, that's why I find the whole scene where she talks about her mother, or quote unquote Beatrice in EP2 to be so saddening, because that is the only detached way that like Sayo even know how to approach the topic of her mother, who is imprisoned by her father, who's also the person who gave birth to her. Like it's so saddening, and like I'm like Beatrice, who's trying, like the whole concept. Like, okay, I have read all the manga. I really like the manga. Like I know a lot of people
that it's good.
don't.
Yeah,
the art is amazing, and
Was it done by the same people who did the Higurashi manga? Or was it
every single I know, like there's 5 authors, like there's 5 mangakas like across the whole board, but like the art is beautiful. Like EP8 art and EP5 art is like just like one of the best things you can ever imagine. Like I say parts of EP8 is even better in the manga than in the VN, like, which is,
you know, to play a damn cake mini game in the manga.
The mini game in the manga is really good. And also there's a scene where basically after Anjay like reads the Book of Truth and she comes back to the Golden Land when she meets up with everybody, like that scene is so much better in the manga than in the like VN.
That's what I did, right? And all the skulls around her. Yeah.
Yes.
So powerful.
That's she's like, please live, and like I am the one. Like if you have to hate anybody, hate me. Like I am the one who took your future from her and future from you. And I'm like, oh, I cry every time I read that scene. Like, So yes, Beatrice. So like. What do we want to start with Beatrice? I feel like we have such like explosive thoughts.
I don't even know. Beatrice is such like there is almost too much to talk about with Beatrice. Okay. You know, like let's start from the easy part. Like Beatrice, why do you think about Beatrice and sex? Like why do you think Beatrice is like overly she's not only like she's not sexualized by the story, but she's she's proud of her sex. Like she's proud of her boobs. She's proud of her like her looks. Like she's like what's your thoughts on that?
Because she's the only like fully fantasized personality, which means she can have whatever body she wants.
I thought she, when we see her in the, what is it? What's the room with the bomb called again?
Let's just call it the gold room. The room where there's the gold.
Oh, it's just called the gold room? Okay. I think, doesn't she still look like that?
No, she wears a wig.
And there's a very important difference if you look at the Ryukishi sprites for Beatrice. Like that whole little thing I said where she looks down her shirt and sees her boobs. Like she actually has to pull her shirt all the way out because her dress comes up to over her chest where her breasts would start. So you can assume she's probably wearing Shannon's forms, like Shannon's breast forms when she's wearing that dress.
I think that's a really important thing that they noted, which is that like Beatrice has to be dressed in a way that you actually can't see anything but like a suggestion of a cleavage, like there's no like tits, like and I think that's like really a very deliberate choice. Like that's a choice that he made even when he was designing the clothes.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, yeah, I was mentioning this part while we were basically on break, but I think in the beginning part of part 1, I talked about how sex is used as power in the Ushiromiya family, and I think it's incredibly hilarious that like Sayo is like, I want my power fantasy girl boss Beatrice to basically dom a battler where I get to like strip him naked and put him in my little.
That's kind of the thing, right? Is that like Battler says this whole thing, like, oh, what kind of girl do I like? Well, I don't know. I've been reading a lot of porno mags, so blonde and bouncy, and all that stuff, and like probably a personality where I could like fight back at them a little bit, like Jessica's, and like. And the thing is that Beatrice isn't just that. It's Sayo taking that and running with it. Like,
yeah,
like
100%.
Battler never says, you know, a girl I like would strip me naked and drag me around on a chain. But Sayo still does that. Yeah. There's
totally.
So it is. Yeah. So Beatrice exists not only as Battler's fantasy, but as the fully realized witch, right?
Yeah, like,
as Sayo's self, who has ultimate power to do anything she wants, you know, for good and bad, and that manifests in a lot of ways. This can't just be a Beatrice character study because we could be here for the next 6 hours.
100%.
But specifically in terms of gender,
oh my God, yeah,
like that. It's
the 6-hour Beatrice episode.
Yeah, I guess the reason that she is like so sexual is because like that is the reason that her personality was made, was to service Battler sexually.
Well, I don't necessarily agree with that.
I think that's partially true, but I think that's the seed, and then she grows out of that. Yeah,
but just a bit of reason.
Yeah, I think one of the things is that like I find her Shannon personality is very like I'm a reserved, like I'm a maiden, like you know, like, but like, and her Canon personality probably doesn't even think about sex, but like Beatrice is the where she gets to be like, want to express my like sexuality, I want to be kinky, I want to like, if I want to step on Battler, I want to know like who's boss. Like I feel like that is very different from like how even like Shannon approaches her, like basically the whole EP2 argument between Shannon and Beatrice is that she's like, well, you don't have any lust for him, like you don't lust for him, and like so on and so forth, like all of that, and like, and that's a very different attraction she has. Like, well,
what Beatrice says to Shannon in episode 2 is that love is lust, and just you wait, that boy will turn, and all he wants is a cheap trick, and you doesn't really love you because love doesn't exist, which is like once you know how she feels about Battler is really illuminating, and like how she feels about like, you know, these are the insecurities she has around George, is that she's going to want to have sex and that she's going to have to be like, hey, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. And I just find that so fascinating. And I mean, I think,
really great.
I think I mentioned this multiple times on the podcast, but my personal favorite EP is EP6 because I just love metaphors. Like the EP6 is just metaphors off the walls. Like it keeps coming and never stops. And like the idea of like Beatrice is like she does feel like it's something that makes her happy. Like I feel like she does like the aesthetic. Like she does like to being witchy. Like it gives her like it does bring her makes her feel powerful, like as like something to be feared and something to be loved. And I think I mean it's like the Office meme, you know, like as in I want them to fear how much they love me. I think like Beatrice is just like really what I think like Sayo's way of like basically being like, this is what I could be if I had everything in my like if I power to be, I guess, like, and I mean like I think Sayo does want tits.
I mean
oh yeah, totally. I mean I feel like it's pretty important that 2 of her personalities are women, including the main one she exists in most of the most of the games.
And also that her dress for Shannon is like kind of fucking going over the top with how big the tits are.
I know. That's my favorite part, is that she was like, well, Shannon needs to be growing boobs. And she went out and she bought the biggest fucking fillers that they could find.
It's like, boob store,
what size
biggest
tits?
boobs I can get.
Literally. And she was right. God damn it.
And I also always thought it was incredibly hilarious that like, how did I not realize that like the fact that like Shannon has the actual whole ass tattoo of the golden eagle on her fucking leg is not the most glaring issue in the whole story. Like
And the other leg is all covered up, but that's the one that Beatrice is on.
Yeah. It's just like,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Juicy.
Very juicy. I mean, even to go deeper into the when they cry of it, Sayo is also a 3/4.
Oh, 100%. Oh my god. I literally wait. No. One of the things that, like, okay, this is something that Sayome brought up that I was like, I hate this, but I just want to mention it on this podcast now because you mentioned Sayo, is that Sayome was like, hey, Yasu is like Jesus in Japanese, and I was like, I don't even know.
Oh my god!
Like, I was like, how do I even process that information? Like, what? Like.
I mean, do you know the story of the Portopia serial murder case?
Oh yeah,
no,
the fucking
yes.
Yeah. Yasu, the culprit. Yeah. That whole thing. I didn't know about Jesus though.
The fact that like Yasu is the culprit was the first thing I found out about Umineko just from like a random TV Tropes article way before I read it.
Mm-hmm.
Aw. Yeah.
Well, but you don't know who Yasu is until episode 7.
My other favorite thing about the whole like weird snippets about Umineko, if I have to mention something, is that so I learned about like this thing called the Shannon number, which is basically like how like what is the like the ultimate possibility of how many like ways you can play chess, and like you would think like, oh, there's infinite numbers, but of course there's like a specific amount of numbers, and the amount of number is called the Shannon number.
Yeah.
And then funny story about that is that my friend who's currently reading Umineko, who's on like the end of EP4, was just Googling out for big numbers because like Umineko loves to talk about numbers so fucking much.
They love numbers.
Yes, like, and then so he was Googling around and he was like, oh, I just found this humongous number, and it's like it's basically 10 to the 120, and it's called the Shannon number. We like the word Shannon, and I was like literally screaming in my brain.
That sure is a funny coincidence.
We do like the Shannon number. Yay!
I was like, ha ha, chess, ha, Shannon number. I was like,
the fact that it's 10 to a particular power too is just so
to 120. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, with the quadrillion, like the 10 to the whatever power in the epitaph. Yeah.
Is our epitaph episode out yet?
No, it's not going to be out until the end of EP4. We did a whole episode on epitaph. And
we talked we talked about the epitaph for like forever. It's really fun.
There's a lot to talk about.
I know there's so much more we can possibly talk about, but we are getting to another hour and a half. I know.
This is what happens when I quit podcasts. We just go. I'm so sorry.
Okay, no. I am.
It's okay. I've been having a blast.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last question I guess I would go for is, did you read Confession of the Golden Witch, and did you like it? Did you hate it? Like,
I almost want to just do an episode on Confession.
We will.
Yeah, you should.
We will. We have to.
I've read Confession. It's one of the only parts of the Umineko novel that I've actually read. I think I have kind of a love-hate relationship with it personally.
Okay.
It's like, on the one hand, it is cool to see Sayo just talk about this stuff straight out and to get some concrete answers, and here is Sayo struggling with the onset of her puberty not happening, and here is Sayo struggling with
gender
all these
dysphoria.
Yeah, for sure. Oh god, the part where she's where it's this is how a boy would talk when talking about Canon is so funny.
It's this boy thing, maybe I can try it out for 2 weeks, it would just be a trial period. It doesn't have to mean anything,
It's just oh god, I'm in it. Yeah. So I really like it on that sense, but also it kind of flies in the face that everything Umineko is about.
Yeah, I think
getting
that's
concrete answer. The whole point of episode 8 is that you don't need to know that stuff. You don't need to see her wringing her heart out and crying, and you can if you are willing to solve the mystery and read between the lines, and like, you don't have to read that hard in between the lines. I think between episode 6 and 7, like, you get what's going on, I think. So I don't know. I feel kind of conflicted about it. Like, it's cool to see, but also, like, thematically it kind of undermines Umineko, but you know, it's whatever.
That's interesting. I think I like Confession from just like the way how it's told. I think it brings me chills every time, but I think like the more I think about Confession, I do like, part of me do feel like it's a little bit too much. Like, maybe I didn't want to see it, but I am glad it exists, I guess. Like, someone wanted it to be there, I guess.
This is our privilege as witches of theater going, right? Is that we can tear the guts out of the cat and look at it whatever you want. You know, and it's that double-edged thing of like, you can look at the guts, but it is also like, I mean, the thing is that it's a violation of privacy for this fictional character, but the fact that you feel it so acutely, I think, is just, if anything, like, regardless of Confession existing or not, it's a real testament to how well written Umineko is that when you get to Confession, even if you do read it, you still feel that sensation of like, oh, I'm seeing something I shouldn't see.
Yeah, like there's like, you feel like it's very voyeuristic, like you feel bad, and then,
totally.
And I mean, maybe that's what's truly like good about it, is the fact that you do feel bad about it.
Totally. Yeah. It shows that Umineko does what it wants to do. It makes you feel bad about reading the culprit's confession. Umineko's good. It's beyond the scope of this podcast, but Umineko is good.
I think we're it. I don't even know what we can possibly talk about, which I mean by there's so much to talk about.
We are 4 hours into a recording session. I think we're good.
Feel like
this was a very fucking dense episode.
Oh yeah.
That's the thing about Umineko, is at a certain point you just have to say, okay, we're done talking about it. There's so much more to say, but we're done.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so is there any ending thoughts about gender on Umineko? Everybody can say something, and then we should close it out.
Okay.
I kind of wonder if, like, a little bit of me wonders if, like, Ryukishi wrote the trans parts as just a natural part of the story, or he just like, wow, I'm learning about trans issues. I should write a trans character and write the best one I can.
Again, no spoilers, but you should. Who hasn't read Caconia here?
I haven't. Yes, have you read Caconia?
I've read like 2/3 of it.
I've read all of it.
Okay, yeah.
I
know what you were
okay, yeah.
say.
Just. I guess just that, like, yeah. I feel like, knowing Ryukishi's later work, I feel like him working with, like, transness and, like, gender weirdness and stuff, I feel like was, if not here, certainly becomes a very, like, it's something he's really interested in. I mean, even back in Higurashi, he's, like, writing about slightly weird gender, right?
Ryukishi trans theory.
Ryukishi's, like, kind of generally always had leftist political messaging.
Yeah, totally.
In his stories, like, Higurashi is just Antifa.
Yeah,
we're gonna be here for
really
another
is.
half an hour if we get into Higurashi Antifa discussion. My thoughts on gender in Umineko. Honestly, my brain is like completely fried. We've been at this for 4 hours now. We started at 5 p.m. and it's 9 p.m.
Yeah,
I don't know anymore.
9 p.m. Oh god.
Gender is pretty good. I'm gonna fall out of my chair.
Cringe. These people are inventing pronouns like I am Canon and Shannon. I am two people. Like, shut up.
It's the SJWs want you to believe.
The SJWs in 1986.
Oh my god.
My favorite trans meme that I recently just read on Twitter was saying, stop making fun of our gender, like, and stop making fun about all these pronouns, because I'm gonna make yours was were, and I was like, oh damn.
Yeah, that one's so good. That one's so good.
These fucking these trans SJWs are like inventing things like Shannon and Canon are two different people. No, they're one. That's basic biology.
Oh my god. Hell. I'm in hell. You sent me to hell. My final thoughts are that even if Umineko as a book, as a series, is not about transness in the way I kind of wish it was. It is still a story, like, suffuse with queerness because it is so suffused with Beatrice, who is trans. There's no other possible reading, like, even the broadest, like, strictly going by the text. Sayo is trans. She exists in a place caught up inside of her gender, caught between gender. She is, in the way that Ryukishi understands that manhood and womanhood are systems of control for people, Sayo is someone caught between both of them, and he knows that. And even if I wish he could have investigated it in a more particular way with an eye towards, like, kind of trans culture, I still think the thing that we get is, like, for something written by someone who, as far as we know, is, like, a cis het man living, you know, living in Japan in his 40s, like, for all of this shit, like, a truly wonderful character who deserves nothing but love, that the series reinforces over and over and over again, is someone who is worthy of love, deserving of love, whoever she is. And I think that's really wonderful.
Yeah.
Aw, I think I couldn't said it better than that, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much for everybody for listening to this episode. I would like to tell you that we have recorded at this point 4 hours, 5 hours. I can't even tell anymore.
We started at 5. It's 9. It's 9:05.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jen, for being on this podcast.
Yeah.
Please plug yourself again.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for bearing with me as I continue to talk and talk and talk about Umineko, which is the only thing I know how to do.
Oh, it's okay.
I have been extremely happy to have you on. I would love to have you on again. Plug yourself. Plug what?
Yes,
where do we find you?
Yes, so I am the ambassador of a little podcast by the name of Golden Truths and Umineko Podcast, which is, in fact, a podcast about Umineko. You can find us on the web at goldentruths.net, or on Twitter or on Tumblr at goldentruthspod. And you can find that podcast on your podcast platform of choice, probably. If not, maybe DM the Twitter account and we can see what we can do. You can find me on Twitter at Kebs, Kebbbbs. That's Kebs with 4 Bs. Or you can find me on Tumblr at Daihenshin, DAIHENSHIN. Thank you all again so much for having me on.
Yeah.
I definitely want to come back, and I can't wait to see wherever.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.